Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Wow, I must have had it. Maybe I should have had a cocktail before I started today, especially hanging out with Tom Ham. Hey, Tom, how are you, my friend? Welcome to another CarmCast with Tom's Trends. Oh, what is that?
Guess what? No, never mind.
All
What?
right, don't tell me. Don't tell me
All
what's
right.
in that tin cup
Okay.
over there. But yeah, I mean, it's happy hour down in Florida where you are, I'm
Yes,
sure.
sir. It's
All
always
right.
happy hour somewhere.
Good for you. Hey, we're coming to you live from the Remarkable Results Radio Podcast Studio. We love to hang out with you here in the Carm Cave. We
I
got so
love the
much fun
cave.
bringing you all this really cool stuff each and every week. I mean, God, how
Love
many
that cave.
podcasts a week are we doing? Jeez.
Jealous of the cave.
Yeah, jealous of the cave. Well,
Yes, I
listen,
am.
listen. Let me come to Florida or Orlando area, right? And I'll bring some stuff down, and we'll just stick it to the wall.
We have room for a studio right here, portable studio, and we can have some fun.
Oh, cool. Hey, look at Tom is of course always willing to bring me some really cool stuff from the Automotive Management Network, and of course his shop Autocentric in Grand Rapids, Michigan. What a resource Automotive Management Network is. Over Tom, how many? 17 plus thousand members.
Yeah, we're close to that. We're closing on that, getting a little closer all the time.
Excellent, it's a resource. So because I love Automotive Management Network, and Tom is doing surveys, he's getting all kinds of data. Why wouldn't I want to pick his brain as to what's the pulse of the industry doing? I mean, we talk about the pulse of business acumen, and Tom talks about that and everything else. So I don't know if you've watched TV lately. But there's this inflation thing going, and especially the day that we're recording, they said that new economic stuff came out, and the world is worried, Tom, that we may be headed to an incredible peak like we've never seen. What, maybe from the 80s?
It's it's been a while. Right now we're up over 7% for the last couple months or so. And last time we did the 7% thing was in the 1970s, and did that for about 9 or 10 years, which essentially meant that back then prices doubled in 9 years, which is kind of a scary thing when you think about it. And I want to pause a second. You last time you referred to abbreviations, and sometimes we use a word like inflation. We just throw it around, and especially in the news, they throw it around like everybody knows exactly what they mean, and sometimes it's not as obvious. And in inflation, sure, that's the cost of something going up, and they'll say the inflation rate's 7% in January. Well, that doesn't mean it went 7% in January. Anytime they say inflation rate on the news, they're talking about an annualized number.
Yeah.
Rarely do they point that out. They just assume that you know that, but they're always talking about an annualized number. So if it went up 7%, if January was 7%, that means it went up 0.6 or something during that month. But I just clarify that sometimes people, right away will throw out a number they're not familiar with, and they wonder what we're talking about. But yeah, 40-year high. It actually got up to 14% 1980, right at the end of that little streak there.
Do you know what we were paying for mortgages? We were paying for car loans. It was
You couldn't get a mortgage.
absolutely
Land contracts.
ridiculous.
Yeah. Anyways, it's been higher. It was when you were a kid, it was 23% in 1920.
Oh, thanks.
That's okay. But it's been higher, but that was the latest thing. And we may be heading there again. They're figuring the average household right now, it's costing them about $250 a month.
I'm totally not surprised by that, because for the first time in about 3 weeks, we went grocery shopping together, and I think it was last Saturday, and I'm looking around at one of our big shopping centers, grocery stores, and Tom, I have to tell you, I've seen it go up, but I was so moved by the cost of lettuce and the cost of strawberries. I mean, obviously this stuff isn't anything we're growing locally, right? It's coming in from whatever warm climates. I was culture shocked as to the prices, and I was stopping to think: has my income gone up to help cover that gap?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what do we have to conserve on? What do we have to save on? It's great that I don't have that car payment, and My God, Tom. And we're willing to sit by and say, I've never been affected by this before, so what's the big deal?
Yeah, I know it's fun. You go, like you say, go shopping with your wife. As old guys, we go to the store for something we haven't shopped for in years, and we go in there and say, "When did milk go over $2 a gallon? What happened?"
I know.
Wives are going, "And you are out of it."
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you've been paying for that unbeknownst to you for all this time. Oh my. So
But
look at
what happens is it's damaging to shops, and they don't realize it. In 1970s, that killed a lot of shops,
yeah,
and it's in the process of killing shops right now. And if it's costing a household another $250 a month, you know that it's costing a shop more.
yeah.
And it's like the frog in the pot of water. It just keeps creeping up, and you're so busy with other things, and you don't really realize what's going on. I looked up some numbers. Car repair, 1970, $100 car repair in last year would have been $850.
Average ticket.
Yep. $100 to $850, and some of us were repairing cars in 1970. So it just gives you an idea what goes on there. But and then I got an example of a repair shop. You get into real numbers and how critical it is to watch the gross profit percentages, how to prevent that money drain, how to make sure your profits stay up where they're supposed to be. And I just take an example of like 3 shops.
Okay.
And we want to generally people talk about a total gross profit of 60% or so, and we can go a few percentage points either way. But the general idea that's a range you'll often hear. And Shop A is kind of keeping an eye on things, doing pretty good this year, and they'll end this year with a 61% GP. And Shop B isn't paying attention real well, and they're at 56 at the end of the year. And Shop C is just oblivious to this kind of stuff. They don't watch the news. They don't pay attention to numbers all that much. They're too busy fixing cars. And all 3 shops do about $1 million in sales. And you say, well, how big of a difference does that make at the end of the day? Well, at the end of the year, Shop A has $50,000 more than Shop B and has $100,000 more in the bank than Shop C. And that's the difference in shops that do well, shops that don't do well, and shops that die.
Paying attention to gross margin is just one of the elements, but how important, because as that gross margin comes in, that's what you pay the bills with.
Yep. Obviously, it gets converted to dollars, and people say you don't pay with percentages, you pay with dollars, but that you arrive at the dollars through the percentages. And it's real critical to just be. There's some things, some of these numbers, you don't need to learn a lot of. If you're not into math, numbers are not your thing. You don't need to learn a lot of numbers, just a few, and this is one of them. And need to learn these and monitor them and watch them really, really close. Now, here's
the beauty. But Tom, the beauty is that the software today has these incredible matrices in it that help you cover your margin butt.
The software is just flying in how sophisticated it's getting, and the things that are coming, and the things that it can do with analytics, so on and so forth. And it is becoming real critical to have more each year, to have really, really first class software that can give you lots and lots of numbers.
Yeah.
I threw together a few quick tips on keeping track of it. The days of monitoring this stuff at the end of the month, especially when inflation is going like this, you can't do that. Or even at the end of the week. It has to be monitored daily, and it really has to be monitored by the RO. And it used to be this would be a long, arduous process, but today, again, with a good software, this is just a matter of taking like two or 3 minutes. It really shouldn't take hardly any time at all. And you should be able to pull up your ROs from yesterday. Let's say you had 10 of them, and you look at them, and 6 or 7 of them are above that 60% point, and a few of them aren't. And then you're taking a look at the significant dollar ones that are below the cut line, your goal line, and you just investigate into those. I mean, is there a good reason? Did it have a set of tires on it? Of course, it's going to be lower. But is it because the labor rate really is too low? Is it because the what we charge for parts was insufficient? What messed up the GP on that RO? And you just look at it, and sometimes it's just part of the way things are. But other times there's something that needs to be fixed. There's something that needs to be adjusted. We need to go in there and we say, okay, here's what we charge for brake fluid service, and if we look at the GP on that, it doesn't work. Now, whatever that is, and so we've got to fix the GP, and you can do it one at a time. Sometimes if you're way off, maybe you need to do an across the board thing of labor rate, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. But it's really critical to watch it every day. At the end of the month, we look at expenses.
Yeah,
those are hard to track on a daily, weekly basis. But at the end of the month, we really look at that expense statement. And a couple things we've seen over the years: the expense statements, people have way too few lines in their expense statement, so they'll have multiple things lumped into one line. Like they'll have a utility line where they put in all 3 or 4 different utilities, and this is the monthly utility thing. Well, that's great, because why is it higher? Which one of the things? So we got to separate those all out, and the same goes for every other thing. A typical shop nowadays should expense statement should have 75, 100 lines on it, maybe more. I had a friend of mine, she had an accounting background, and her expense statement had 300 lines on it. She could
that's
tell you
detailed.
Boy, yeah, it was really detailed, a little bit much for me, but she was able to really monitor things real well.
But your point is so well taken. You may get the letters in the mail from vendors that aren't parts vendors. Say, for example, your uniform vendor, and you rip it open, you say, hey, we're really sorry, with all the additional expenses, we've got to raise prices starting next month. And you just throw the envelope in the mail and you just accept it, because that's what's going on. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Fight this thing? Am I going to get mad, jump up and down, stamp my feet? But if you're not looking at the bill that came in, and it was $250 last month, and now it is $325, and you didn't make an adjustment.
Yeah, and you really should be able to, if you're kind of tracking these the way you should. Today's always a good day to start. You should be able to go back and say what percentage, and it's going to be a small percentage because we're talking uniforms, but what was it 5 years ago and 4 years ago and 3 and 2 and now, and what's going on here with that? Have I wandered out of the reasonable range of what it should be? Do I need to start shopping that one or not? This all goes into this profit and this inflation thing. If our costs go up, then what we charge has to go up. Absolutely. You certainly want to stay even with it. You don't want to just dragging behind a little bit will cost tens of thousands of dollars. So, you want to stay even with it. If it's really starting to rage like it is right now, maybe you even get a little bit ahead, so you're kind of covered for the ones that you miss and don't see. But it just wanders off, and next thing you know, your P&L suffers, and you wonder why. But
I was talking to a shop owner, Tom, don't mean to interrupt you, just yesterday, and one of the things he said, I really am, 2 things I'm worried about is where inflation is going and hiring the best people. And I've got to generate the kind of profit in my company so that I can do that.
Absolutely.
And he said on this call yesterday, I raised my labor rate yesterday, $25 an hour. Now that's only yesterday. And he says, next week, I'll tell you guys if anybody has kind of flinched or jumped or anything like that, which he doesn't believe is going to happen. But he said, everybody said, wow, that's a really big jump. Usually people go up 10 or 15, but he did 25. I can't wait to report on that when I find that out. But that's what needs to happen.
Sure. And it depends where you are too. I mean, that's not necessarily, you get out in the West Coast, that may be a 10% increase in your labor.
You're right. That could be a catch-up number, right?
Whereas there's probably parts of the United States where that's a 30% increase. It just depends on where you are. But no, that's a good point. We got to keep on this stuff. And the technician labor rate thing is certainly what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Well, in this case, we really don't have to debate that back and forth. What comes first is, let's call the chicken the technician. That's what comes first, because your labor rate needs to be based on what you have to pay to get a first-class technician, not the other way around. It is what it is. And it's just like you got to treat a technician in a financial sense. You need to treat a technician like a part. You have a certain margin. You're going to mark up that part, certain multiplier that you use. And technician is the same way. One, is it a water pump or is it a 1 hour of technician? Same thing. Thing. And you have to mark it up the same way.
Totally agree with you. As a side note to the things you were talking about a little earlier about inflation back in the day, me and Ann were watching an old TV show or an old movie, and in it, someone said, "Oh, so they were trying to fleece you for 50 grand." It was like a 1960s thing, and I said, that seems like an awful lot of money back in 1960. So I went to my phone and I typed in $50,000 in today's money, just to get a perspective. When someone looked at 50 grand, it's $443,000 today. And we cannot ignore the fact that back in the day, 50 grand was little money today. And that's what we have to pay attention to, especially where we've come off an economy that, we were affording everything. Our gas prices were low. Meat was low. Vegetables. I don't want to go into the litany of that thing. But the rule is, if you're affected by it, how does it affect me, my business, and my people's? So thank you for forcing this whole inflation concept on us here today.
Keep an eye on it. Watch the news a little bit, kind of learn a little bit about it, and because it does all pertain to your business. And I throw one last thing on: when you're watching the expenses, one good way to watch them better, and actually this applies to your GP and everything else, is use what we call trending. I mean, here we're talking about trends. Well, use what we call trending. What trending is instead of using the monthly number, use a 3-month rolling average. Take the last 3 months, roll those into one, divide them by 3. That's your number for last month, in theory. And then do the same thing next month. And you're going to get a much smoother curve of what's going on. And you're going to get a more accurate view of what's actually happening with your business. And then you can kind of track these as kind of, going up as green, going down as red. And you can see these trends on a spreadsheet, and it'll really kind of make things jump out at you and be conscious of them. I want to throw that out. Now, and not to be completely negative, I did want to throw one positive thing at the end here. We're always hearing, the cars are getting newer. They need less maintenance. They last longer, which means less service visits, less visits to the bay, right? We all know that. We've all heard that. But is that true? Well, I'll tell you what's going on right now. Right now, for the last year or two here, new car sales have tanked. You can't buy a new car. And you've got customers, you've got a bunch of customers that they were going to get another car and they didn't get it. They brought it to you instead, and they're fixing it up. And as the fleet ages during this period of time where there's no new cars available, or very few, the fleet is aging, and the higher mileage cars require more repair. So we actually are in an area right now, in a period of time, where that frequency of service visit at least has plateaued, and it actually may be reversing at this point as the fleet ages and no new cars are added into it. So that's one of the reasons you're busier. That's one of the reasons some of the shops are expecting this year and maybe a couple of years after to be the best years ever in the history of auto repair.
Yeah, there was a sweet spot, but it's a sweeter spot than
yes,
ever.
it is. Yeah, things are looking good right now.
I also read, Tom, that used car pricings are plateauing. I mean, they're done going up. Did you hear that?
They can only go up so high, Some of these prices have gone, it's just anecdotal stuff is we had we bought a loaner car about 6-7 years ago. It was an '02 and it was starting to get a little shaggy. So we decided to replace it. And we bought it 6-7 years ago or whatever for, I think $5,000. And we just sold it last month for $4,500. So and most of us have stories of something we bought recently we've been selling for more. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of fun. But then you got to buy something to replace it too. So
yes, you do.
In
Which is good.
Real estate down here, with the inflation, the area that we're in 2021, the housing prices went up 20%, and they're projecting for this year, they're projecting another 16%.
Jeez.
So you're talking massive increases in the cost of housing right now.
That's factoring into this whole inflation thing. I would imagine. Yeah. Well, hey, look at Tom's Trends. Love this show. We do it monthly, everyone. Please check it out. Tom, of course, is on the pulse of the aftermarket with Automotive Management Network. I thank you so much for all the great contributions that you've made, Tom, and for you, my listener, who comes to this podcast as the service market's best kept secret to personal audio networking. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Hey, have a great day.
You too, man.